Why was everyone laughing except her? The training hall stank of sweat and rubber mats, 30 recruits shifting in formation while their boots squeaked under the neon glare. The air was thick, metallic, waiting for something to start. Then she walked in. Lieutenant Commander Erin Carter. Her right arm was bound in a rigid black brace from wrist to elbow, a sling pressed tight against her side. She moved like someone who had measured the distance between pain and purpose 1,000 times, and chosen purpose every single time. At the far end, Sergeant Mason Bricks, muscly bound, loud, the kind of man who filled silence with his own echo, grinned. "I didn't know the Navy was hearing one-armed instructors now," he muttered, just loud enough for the others to hear. The laughter came fast, nervous, contagious, the kind that doesn't know who it's mocking until it's too late. Erin didn't even blink. She adjusted the strap of her sling, eyes on no one, voice steady. "Violence is loud," she said. "Control is quiet, watch closely." The laughter died, curiosity took its place. Even Bricks' mid-grin froze. Somewhere inside that heavy, echoing hall, silence became its own kind of authority. Before the hour was over, every recruit would learn what that silence meant. Erin Carter didn't fill a room when she entered it, she reshaped it. Early 30s, calm posture, movements so precise they unsettled people. Every breath measured, every gesture efficient. The brace on her arm looked like something that should limit her, but she wore it the way soldiers wear medals, unapologetically earned. She was a Navy SEAL officer, once embedded deep in Helmand, Afghanistan. Now reassigned to a joint training facility after what the reports called mobility impairment and soft tissue trauma. Bureaucratic words to hide something rawer, something that still lived behind her eyes. A helicopter landing zone swallowed by dust. Gunfire too close. One decision that saved another life and cost her part of her own. At dawn, while the rest of the base still chased coffee, she ran laps around the perimeter, brace and all, her silhouette moving through fog like a ghost too disciplined to vanish. Recruits whispered, they always do. She's here because she can't fight anymore. She broke her arm in sparring. She's hiding. Rumors, soft and cowardly, grew louder with repetition. But the few who had served long enough to know better, men like Commander Blake Hensley, saw her differently. Hensley, gray-templed, the kind of man whose authority didn't need to raise its voice, entered the hall mid-session with a clipboard in hand. He watched her instruct without interrupting. "Morning, Lieutenant Commander," he said finally. "How's the range?" Erin answered without hesitation, her tone as balanced as her stance. "Fully operational, sir. No small talk, no excuses. Just composure." Her locker was kept like a ritual, meticulous, impersonal, except for one photograph that never moved from the top shelf. 3 figures in desert fatigues, standing before a battered Hesco wall, dust on their boots, smiles caught between exhaustion and pride. Beneath it, handwritten initials and a date. No explanation. No need for one. Once, a recruit lingered on that picture too long. Erin noticed. Their eyes met. No reprimand, no softness. Just silence that pressed like weight. The recruit muttered an apology. That was the end of it. Her classes were never about dominance. They were about leverage, about the invisible mathematics of balance and timing. She drew diagrams on the whiteboard with clean, unhurried lines. "You can't throw someone twice your weight out of the ring," she said, chalk squealing softly. "But you can make his joints speak your language." She demonstrated using her left hand only, slowly, elegantly, letting pauses fall where pain would live. She never said the word pain. She didn't have to. Half the recruits scribbled frantic notes. The other half smirked, waiting for muscle to prove her wrong. That's when Sergeant Brix stepped forward. Brix was a wall of man, Marine instructor, voice like gravel in a barrel, proud of every bruise he'd ever given or taken. "What we teach here is endurance," he barked, "not ballet." The room laughed again, relieved to have someone translate their discomfort into noise. Erin turned to him, expression calm. Her voice didn't rise. "Endurance breaks bones, control prevents it." He tilted his head. "Out there, ma'am, control gets you killed." "Out there," she said, "control keeps you alive long enough to think." Hensley, still watching, said nothing. He didn't have to. Later in the quiet after drills, when recruits had filed out, Hensley remained in the doorway, styrofoam cup of coffee untouched in his hand. "Good tempo," he said as she rolled up the mats. "They follow your instructions." Erin nodded once. "They push too hard." He smiled faintly. "Everyone does until the wall pushes back." In the armory, she signed out training knives and padded helmets in tidy block letters, her handwriting calm, soldierly. The duty chief, a scar-creased Marine with 3 tour behind him, glanced at her brace. "You running them blindfolded again tonight?" he asked. She looked up, unreadable. "With their eyes open," she said. He chuckled into his sleeve. She took the gear and left. That night sleep came in fragments. The brace itched, tugging at the ghosts inside her nerves. She counted breaths until memory let go. At dawn she jogged again, one arm still locked, the other pumping rhythmically, measured, relentless. Sometimes she caught Hensley's silhouette by the floodlights, watching. He never called out. He didn't need to. The recruits' gossip evolved as all gossip does, from curiosity to myth. "She's hiding from her past." "She's here for revenge." "No, she's here so we don't end up like her." None of them were completely wrong. But none of them were right either. Erin corrected form, not rumors. When a recruit dropped an elbow too low, exposing a shoulder, she was there in an instant, fingers adjusting, voice quiet. "Don't give your enemy free choices." Brix preferred impact. He roared and slammed pads, praising bruises like medals. His lessons were about surviving force by being louder than it. Erin were about something else entirely. One afternoon, he stood at the doorway of her session, arms folded, jaw flexing. "Tell me," he said, "you win fights with chalk drawings." She capped her marker. "I prevent them." He snorted, "Where I come from, same thing." She looked at him, not unkindly, not superior, just steady. "Then maybe where you come from needs fewer fights." It wasn't defiance, it was gravity. And for the first time, Brix didn't have an answer. Weeks passed. The whispers became habits, the kind that live in the corners of every locker room. Falcon, that was what some of them called her now, after the small black tattoo under her sleeve. A bird mid-flight, minimal, sharp. No one knew what it meant. Some said it was personal. Others said it was the emblem of a unit that didn't officially exist. Once another officer glimpsed it and murmured, "Falcon." Erin met his eyes with a ghost of a smile, but said nothing. Hensley, noticing, shifted the subject without comment. In her next class, she set a metronome on the table. The recruits looked confused. "Tick, tock, tick." "Decisions can't be rushed," she said, packing slowly. "You don't make better ones, you just make less bad ones." They listened harder than they meant to. Each tick filled the silence between movement and reaction, between panic and breath. Even Brix, eavesdropping at the door, had to admit, if only to himself, that she saw more in 1 second than most men saw in 60. He'd never say it aloud. Pride doesn't speak that language. He wasn't evil, just raised to believe that power meant pressure, that bones proved truth better than patience. No one had ever taught him how something could bend and still never break. Erin wasn't there to humiliate him. She wasn't there to prove herself either. She was there for the recruits, the ones who'd need to remember calm when everything around them demanded chaos. Because the difference between domination and command is invisible until you feel it. That invisible line was about to show itself. The first clash came as a joke, the second as a challenge, the third something like provocation. Hensley didn't interfere. A good commander gives just enough rope for character to reveal itself. Between classes, Erin wiped the board clean. Her chalk phrases read like fragments of a code. Yield early, not late. Turn weight into direction. Control the ground, not the person. By the time the next group entered, the board was spotless, the mat smoothed, the metronome back in her bag. Nothing in her world was ever left to chance. That's when she and Brix finally faced each other. Under the white hum of lights, 30 recruits circled in a loose half-ring. Erin's right arm strapped tight, Brix cracking his neck like a warning. Someone coughed. Another whisper died in mid-sentence. Erin nodded once, not a challenge, just permission. For most watching, it looked like a contest. For a few who understood, it was a lesson waiting to happen. Hensley stood at the edge of the room, arms folded, expression unreadable. He knew this wasn't about pride. It was about translation, the moment when the body learns what the mind refuses to. No one in that hall yet understood what control looked like. But they were about to. What made him think she would back down? The mat was silent except for the faint squeak of rubber soles and the hum of the lights overhead. The recruits formed a wide half-circle, arms folded, eyes restless. Erin Carter stood in the middle, right arm still braced tight, left hand relaxed but alive. Across from her, Mason Brix rolled his shoulders like a fighter before the bell. His grin was too wide, confidence covering something else. "This is just a demonstration, Sergeant," she said quietly. He tilted his head, smirking. "Then let's make it worth the electricity bill." Someone chuckled in the back. Hensley didn't. He folded his clipboard and leaned against the wall. Brix lunged first. Always the same mistake, men who think size means inevitability. He swung low, expecting to meet resistance. She gave him nothing. One half-step, one twist of her hips, and his own weight turned on him. The room heard a dull thud as his back met the mat. 4 seconds, maybe less. Erin released him gently, eyes steady. "Timing," she said, "that's all." The recruits looked from her to Brix and back again. Someone exhaled in disbelief. Brix blinked at the ceiling, then forced a laugh. "Cute trick. Try that on someone who fights back." "Enough," Hensley warned, but his voice carried no force. It was already too late. Brix rose, rolling his neck. "Just one more for the students." Erin didn't move. "If you insist." When he came this time, it wasn't playful. It was a test with teeth. She pivoted, redirected, the sound of contact a soft whisper of fabric, then another thud, heavier. He hit the mat again. No injury, no showmanship. Just precision. The silence that followed was heavy and instructive. Brix sat up slowly, chest rising and falling. His pride burned hotter than the sting in his ribs. He forced out a laugh that didn't quite land. "Guess I slipped." No one joined him. Humiliation ferments quickly in men who mistake noise for dominance. That night the barracks buzzed with whispers. She dropped him twice. With one arm. Didn't even break a sweat. But Erin didn't hear it. She was alone in her quarters, tightening the straps of her brace, breathing through the dull ache that followed every movement. Pain was routine. Pain meant the day still had meaning. Out on the running track, she moved like a shadow stitched to discipline, each step deliberate, silent. Up on the balcony, Hensley watched. He didn't take notes. He didn't need to. By morning, the story had changed shape. Stories always do. Now they said she embarrassed him on purpose, that she smiled when he fell, that she was sending a message. Maybe she was, but not the one they thought. The next day began like any other, until Bricks arrived early. He stood in the doorway of the training hall, gloves in hand, voice too loud for the size of the room. "Ma'am," he called, "you got time to teach me some more control?" The recruits turned. Aaron looked up from the whiteboard. "This isn't on the schedule." "No schedule today," he said, "just reflexes." Hensley wasn't there. No one stepped between them. She exhaled once through her nose, fast, controlled. "All right," she said, "reflexes." They faced each other again. Two instructors, two philosophies, two ways of surviving the same world. The recruits pressed in close, a ring of expectation. Bricks grinned like a man walking into a fight. He'd already convinced himself he'd won. Aaron adjusted her sling, the gesture small, quiet, defiant in its calm. He feinted once, she didn't move. Twice, still nothing. Then, faster than thought, he went for the weak side. The crack that followed sounded like a rifle shot. Time froze. The room inhaled as one body. Aaron didn't, she just stopped. No scream, no collapse. Her face was still, her jaw clenched once, then loosened. She adjusted her sling, voice barely audible. "That's enough." Brick stood there, hand half raised, realization flooding too late. He'd done it, really done it. She stepped back, 1, 2, 3 quiet steps. Every movement deliberate, steady, her breathing a metronome. Then she turned and walked toward the exit. No limp, no stumble. Just that unbearable calm. The recruits didn't know what to do. Stand, speak, apologize. No one moved. The silence pressed on their lungs until someone finally whispered, "She's finished." But the tone wasn't victory, it was guilt. By evening, the story had multiplied. "She's going to medical. She's filing a report. No, she's not the type." They were right about that last part. At 1900 hours, the training log updated. A single new entry. Reflex evaluation, 2100 hours, no exceptions requested. It wasn't a report. It wasn't revenge. It was an invitation. The instructors whispered across corridors. "She can't fight like that. Not with that arm." Then why isn't she backing down? Commander Hensley read the note twice, closed the folder, and said quietly to himself, "She's going to teach him what control really means." Rumors spread faster than orders. By breakfast, the whole base knew. Every version of the story grew a new detail. She smiled when it happened. She didn't flinch. "She's coming for him tonight." But the truth was quieter, harder to repeat. Even the way people spoke her name changed. Carter. Ma'am. Falcon. Something in the air had shifted, respect mixed with unease, like the moment before a storm that doesn't yet know its own size. At the firing range, a Marine swore he'd seen her shoot one-handed from 50 meters, 3 holes so close together they became one. The instructor checked the target later. 3 holes. 1 cluster. Signature left-handed. Proof needs no audience. That evening, Aaron sat cross-legged in the empty training hall. The lights buzzed faintly overhead. The mats glowed dull gray under the fluorescence. Her left hand moved in the air, tracing invisible diagrams, patterns of leverage, lines of force, decisions in motion. She wasn't rehearsing strikes. She was practicing choices. A young recruit, Ensign, too curious for his own good, stood in the doorway half-hidden. He watched her move, pivot, shift, breathe, stillness, pivot again. He realized she wasn't fighting anyone. She was undoing the day, turning it back into control. He left without saying a word. Elsewhere, Bricks sat alone in the gym, punching the heavy bag until his gloves thudded dull and his knuckles went numb. Anger made him strong. Shame made him clumsy. He kept telling himself it was an accident, that she should have known better, that she'd provoked him. But one thought, small and unwelcome, refused to leave. What if her silence wasn't surrender? He hit the bag again. Harder. The question didn't go away. By 2100, the hall lights were already on. The logbook on the desk read, "Reflex evaluation active. Cameras set, safety markers in place. Standard procedure." But nothing about this night would be standard. Aaron entered first, dressed in black training gear, brace polished, eyes unreadable. She didn't stretch, didn't speak. She just waited. From the gallery above, Hensley's footsteps echoed once. He leaned on the railing, voice even. "Reflex Bay, live evaluation, no exemptions, standard parameters apply." She nodded slightly. "I'm ready." Then came the recruits, 3 volunteers, average build, steady nerves. And behind them, Bricks. When he stepped inside, the air thickened. The first Marine, Corporal Alvarez, moved respectfully. He reached for her sleeve, textbook grip. She pivoted a quarter turn, redirected his weight. Soft motion, no harm. He tapped out after 4 seconds. "Reset," Hensley said. The second, Lance Corporal Dean, came in faster, trying to surprise her. She stepped aside, one hand guiding his momentum into air. 6 seconds, another tap. The third, Sergeant Rivas, came low, tight center of gravity, elbows close, no openings. Aaron mirrored his stance. They circled once. He shifted, trying to shoulder her off balance. She didn't resist, just slid aside, one brush of her forearm. He stumbled, found the mat, tapped twice. 7 seconds. Reset. 3 bodies. No pain. No triumph. Just mathematics done perfectly. Then came Bricks. He didn't smile this time. Didn't joke. He stepped onto the mat like a man, walking into confession. "You sure you're combat ready, ma'am?" he asked, trying for sarcasm and missing. "I'm ready to demonstrate corrections," she replied. The timer beeped. He moved with raw power, heavy steps, clenched jaw. She gave him angles. No resistance. Each time he struck, she wasn't there. Each time he grabbed, he caught air. He reached for her left wrist, predictable, desperate. She offered it soft. Then twisted, a perfect turn. His grip dissolved. He recovered, swung his shoulder to block her. She glided sideways, tracing a quarter circle around him. His mass overcommitted, she barely touched him. Momentum did the rest. He stumbled, caught himself, growled. Again he lunged, this time grabbing the strap across her chest. A mistake. She stepped into the pull, body turning like a door on oiled hinges. The sling went taut, redirecting his force harmlessly. His strength found no anchor. Frustration built in him like static. Speed, power both betrayed him. She read him like wind reads a flag. Every muscle, every hesitation. Then gently she marked the end. Her forearm crossed the line of his shoulder, not crushing, not striking, just stopping. Geometry, not aggression. "Stop," she said softly. For a second he didn't move. Then instinct, the same that keeps soldiers alive, took over. He tapped twice. Silence. She released him, stepped back, neutral stance. He stayed on one knee longer than pride wanted. When he finally looked up, her eyes met his, not victorious, not cruel, only steady. "You wanted proof," she said. "Consider it given." The words landed like truth, not triumph. Above, Hensley spoke through the mic. voice calm as ever. Evaluation complete. No applause, no cheers. Just breathing. 30 recruits standing still, understanding something for the first time. Control isn't weakness. It's strength without noise. Bricks rose slowly, the weight in his chest heavier than the one on his back. He didn't look at anyone. Just nodded once to her, half apology, half respect, and walked off the mat. Erin signed the clipboard, replaced the pen, adjusted her sling, and began straightening the mat's edges. She pressed a bubble of tape flat with her fist, smoothing the floor back into order. When she looked up, the recruits were still watching her. Quiet changed. "Class dismissed," she said softly. They filed out in silence. Hensley lingered on the balcony, arms crossed. He didn't speak, didn't smile. Just nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Erin met his gaze, returned the nod. It was enough. How long does it take for silence to become a legend? On that base, about 8 hours. By dawn, the story had already spread beyond the training wing. Every mess hall, every weight room, every corridor whispered it in pieces. She fought him. She dropped him again. She didn't even use her right arm. By breakfast, it wasn't rumor anymore, it was doctrine. And still, nobody could agree on what she'd said when it was over. Some swore she smiled. Others said she just looked at him, like judgment in human form. But no one, not one soul, claimed she'd been angry. Because she hadn't. The next morning, Erin's routine was the same as always. 4:30 run, the dull thump of boots on the track, breath measured against the ocean wind. The brace creaked, her shoulder burned, and somewhere behind the pain lived rhythm. Each step said the same thing: "I'm still here." When she passed the watch post, 2 Marines straightened instinctively. They didn't salute. She outranked them, but she wasn't in uniform. They just watched her go, their eyes different now. Inside the dining hall, conversation dimmed when she entered. Not out of hostility, out of caution. Respect has its own kind of hush. She filled a metal mug, black coffee steaming, then took her seat by the far window. She always chose that same corner, back to the wall, eyes to the light. Old habits die hardest in people who have earned the right to have them. Across the room, Sergeant Bricks sat with his tray untouched. He'd been there long before she arrived. Now he couldn't move. He hadn't slept much, maybe an hour. He replayed the fight again and again, trying to find the moment he lost control, the instant she took it from him. It wasn't when she threw him, it was before that, when she didn't. He looked up just once. She was staring out the window, fingers steady on her cup. Not at him. Not avoiding him. Just present like she always was. That was somehow worse. By noon, the rumors had evolved. Now it wasn't just about the fight, it was about her past. Because when people don't understand control, they look for a reason to fear it. She was with a special unit, one voice whispered in the locker room. "Task Force Falcon," said another, pretending to know what that meant. "Never heard of it." "Exactly." Somebody swore they'd seen classified symbols in her personnel file. Someone else claimed she'd been pulled from active combat after Helmand, shot down during an extraction. Then someone else said no, she'd been the one flying the helicopter. It didn't matter what was true. It mattered that people were talking. And through it all, she never corrected them. Never denied, never confirmed. Silence again was her weapon of choice. In the commander's office, Hensley sat behind his desk, expression fixed in that neutral calm of career officers who have seen too much and say too little. Across from him sat the base legal officer, 2 JAG attorneys, and a pile of reports that smelled of politics. "Are we proceeding with disciplinary action?" one of them asked. Hensley didn't look up. "Against whom?" "Sergeant Bricks, sir. The incident violated training protocols. Injury to a superior officer. Hensley flipped the top folder open. Inside, timestamps, footage stills, medical summaries. He'd watched the tape 3 times. No anger, no misconduct, just a lesson taught the hard way. "Proceed as per regulations," he said finally. "And Carter." The lawyer hesitated. Her composure was exemplary. Hensley closed the folder. "That's one word for it." He didn't smile. But inside he was proud. Proud in that quiet way men like him never say aloud. At 1400 hours, the official notification was posted on the internal network. Disciplinary review scheduled, all parties to attend. By 1600, the outcome was already being guessed in the mess hall. She'll get reassigned. He'll get a slap on the wrist. She's too calm, that's the scary part. The truth came the next morning. The hearing room smelled of disinfectant and paperwork. Rows of uniforms filled the benches. Officers in crisp khakis, trainers in salt-stiff fatigues, even a few from other branches who'd found excuses to attend. Commander Hensley sat at the head of the table, papers aligned with surgical precision. Beside him, a clerk. Across from them, Aaron Carter, left arm at ease, right still strapped tight. Behind her, Sergeant Mason Bricks. Hensley waited until the shuffling stopped. This review concerns an incident during unscheduled training between Sergeant Mason Bricks and Lieutenant Commander Aaron Carter, he began. Footage and witness reports have been reviewed. The facts are undisputed. He turned a page. Sergeant Bricks initiated physical contact beyond authorized training parameters. A restraint maneuver was applied, resulting in aggravation of an existing injury. Intentional application confirmed by review board. A ripple went through the room. Bricks didn't move. "Effective immediately," Hensley continued. "Sergeant Bricks is suspended without pay pending reassignment and mandatory retraining." The words hit like a controlled detonation. No volume, just impact. Bricks's jaw tightened. His knuckles whitened around the edge of the table. But he didn't speak. Because what was there left to say? Hensley turned another page. "Lieutenant Commander Carter." His tone shifted, not softer but steadier. "Your response under provocation demonstrated adherence to restraint protocols beyond standard expectation. Your judgment and discipline are noted." The room murmured, surprise, disbelief, something else. Then Hensley read the final line aloud. "In recognition of exemplary composure under duress, a formal commendation is authorized." He paused, just long enough for the silence to absorb the weight of the next words. "For the record," he said, "Lieutenant Commander Aaron Carter, former Task Unit Falcon, Naval Special Warfare Development Group." The air left the room. Stiff chairs creaked. Someone exhaled too loudly. Bricks's head rose a fraction, confusion flickering into something close to awe. "DVGRU. Tier 1. Falcon." Every soldier in that room knew what those words meant. Or thought they did. They were the names of ghosts who lived in the margins of classified reports, teams that operated where maps had no labels. Carter didn't react. Didn't flinch, didn't smirk. She just nodded once when Hensley said, "Proceed as you see fit, Lieutenant Commander." "Understood, sir." When she stood, chairs scraped the floor. No one had ordered it, but everyone rose. Not salute, not ceremony. Instinct. She left the room as quietly as she'd entered, measured steps, posture straight, presence undiminished. Outside, the hallway was silent, except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Recruits passed, slowing, unsure whether to salute or step aside. She nodded once, and that was enough. By the time she crossed the courtyard, the verdict had already outrun her. Falcon Unit. DVGRU. Tier 1. The whispers sounded different now, less gossip, more prayer. It wasn't just a tattoo anymore. It was a record written under her skin. One of the instructors who used to joke about her sling now stood near the vending machine, arms crossed. "That bird on her arm," he murmured. "She didn't buy it in a parlor." His friend nodded slowly. "No, she earned it." Some truths don't need confirmation. They announce themselves in silence. In her quarters, the commendation folder sat unopened on the desk. She didn't need to read it. Recognition had never been the point. Instead, she reached for the folded photograph taped inside her locker door. The same one of three figures in desert fatigues, sun at their backs, grit in their smiles. She traced the initials at the bottom with her thumb. Some debts never get paid. Some simply get carried well. Then she closed the locker, the echo soft, final. Across the base, Brick sat alone on the bleachers near the track, a suspension notice folded in his hand. The paper trembled slightly in the breeze, trying to escape. He let it go. It fluttered to the ground, skidding under the bench. "I didn't think she'd still be standing," he muttered. "She never stopped," said a voice behind him. Hensley, quiet as ever, appearing from nowhere, the kind of man who doesn't intrude, he just arrives. Bricks didn't turn around. "You knew." "I knew enough," Hensley said, "enough to let her teach the lesson herself." Bricks exhaled through his teeth. "She could have destroyed me." "She didn't," Hensley replied. "That's the point." They sat in silence for a long time, the kind of silence that teaches more than words ever could. Finally, Hensley stood. "When she says control beats strength, she's not quoting doctrine," he said. "She's quoting her life." He walked away, boots echoing on the bleacher's steel steps, leaving Bricks alone with the quiet. That afternoon, the change was visible, palpable. The tone in the halls. The way the recruits greeted each other. Something fundamental had shifted. Instructors who used to mock her pace now adjusted their own. Lessons once dismissed as soft skills became part of the curriculum. And somewhere between drills and downtime, a sentence began to pass quietly from mouth to mouth. "Control isn't weakness." It wasn't shouted. It was whispered like an oath. At 1700, the flag came down in the courtyard, wind snapping the fabric into clean folds. Erin stood at a distance, hands behind her back, the sun catching the faint black lines of the falcon tattoo under her sleeve. For the first time in days, the brace on her arm felt lighter, not because the pain was gone, but because its purpose had been seen. On that base, they would talk about her for weeks. They tell the story in their own ways, each version reshaped by memory. But all of them would end the same. The mark on her arm wasn't decoration. It was proof. Proof that discipline doesn't shout. That silence, held long enough, becomes command. Why did she still dream of sand? It had been months since the desert. Months since the explosion, the static-filled radio, the rotor blades chewing through the dusk. And yet every night, her dreams took her back there. To the endless dunes, to the smell of cordite and burning diesel. To the one voice she couldn't forget. "Falcon 3, you copy." Always the same. Always ending the same. She woke before dawn, sweat cold against her back, the brace digging into her ribs. The hum of the barracks lights replaced the wind. The silence of the base replaced the screaming radio. But inside her chest, the past still breathed. The base had changed since the hearing. The same recruits who once whispered about her now trained with the kind of focus she'd been trying to teach all along. Every command she gave landed differently, not out of fear, but respect. Even the air during drills felt more deliberate, more contained. Control, once mocked, had become contagious. Hensley saw it too. He noticed it in the posture of his men, in the measured tone of their reports, in the way Bricks no longer barked orders but gave them quietly, firmly. He passed Erin on the range one afternoon, her left hand steady on the rifle, breathing in rhythm with the trigger pull. The crack echoed once, twice, thrice, 3 rounds, 1 hole. Hensley watched her holster the weapon. "You ever miss?" he asked. She didn't look up, only on purpose. He nodded once, the corner of his mouth twitching. Then softer, "How's the arm?" "Functional," she said. He waited a beat. "That's not what I asked." She finally looked at him. "It remembers more than it should." "Memory," he said, "is just the scar that never made it to the surface." She tilted her head. "You sound like a priest." "I sound like a man who's seen too many people try to forget the wrong things." That made her pause. Then quietly, "You can't choose what haunts you. You can only choose what it teaches." He smiled faintly. "And what's yours teaching you?" Erin slung the rifle over her shoulder, the strap crossing the brace. "That surviving isn't the same as living." She walked off before he could answer. Bricks avoided her for days after the hearing. Not out of shame, at least not the kind people could see. It was something deeper, a wordless awareness that apology wasn't enough. He started showing up early for drills. Stayed late, picking up mats after everyone left. Quiet, consistent. No speeches, no jokes. Just effort. And one evening, as the recruits filed out, he lingered by the door. "Ma'am," he said finally. Erin didn't look up from her clipboard. "Sergeant." "I wanted to," he stopped. Words were too small for the thing he was trying to carry. She looked up. "Don't say sorry," she said softly. "Just be better." He nodded once, throat tight. "I'm trying." "I know." That was all. But for Bricks, it was enough to start over. The next week, Hensley assigned them joint oversight for a new batch of recruits. When Bricks saw his name beside hers on the duty roster, he hesitated. Then he squared his shoulders. "Understood, sir," he said. Erin didn't object. Maybe she'd expected it. Maybe she wanted to see if lessons could really stick. During the first drill, their teaching styles clashed again, but differently this time. When Bricks raised his voice, she stayed silent until he finished. Then she repeated his same instruction, quiet, clear, efficient. And somehow, the recruits followed hers better. Afterward, Bricks approached her outside the hall. "You know," he said, "you make it hard to compete." "You're not supposed to," she replied. He frowned. "With you or them?" She shrugged. "Either." Then, after a pause, "We're not here to prove we're stronger. We're here to make sure they survive." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Something in him was finally learning what strength actually looked like. It was around that time the message came. Encrypted short, signed only with a single identifier, Falcon Command. Erin found it waiting in her inbox after evening drills. Her finger hovered over the mouse before she opened it. To LT CMDR Erin Carter. From Falcon Command. Subject Ray, inquiry status confirmation. Carter. Recent developments necessitate debrief. Unit records request confirmation of operational clearance. Helmand file under reevaluation. Contact if willing. CO Falcon. Her pulse slowed. She read it again. And again. Helmand. Reevaluation. She closed the message, leaned back and stared at the ceiling. She hadn't heard that name, Falcon Command, since the crash. The memory flickered like film burn in her head. The desert horizon, the incoming fire, the weight of another soldier slumped against her shoulder. There were 4 of them. Falcon 1 through Falcon 4. Only one had walked out alive. Her. Later that night, She sat by the open window of her quarters, the hum of the ocean barely audible beyond the cliffs. The commendation file still sat on the desk, unopened. Beside it lay the old photograph. 3 faces, one missing from the world. She turned it over. Faded ink read. To Carter, if we don't make it back, tell them it was worth it. She remembered the day that picture was taken, just before the mission went sideways. They'd been told it was a quick extraction. It never is. She'd flown the helicopter that night, her first combat evac under fire. They'd been pinned by insurgents along the ridge, 2 miles out. Falcon 2 had been hit. She refused to leave him. When the RPG struck, it tore through the tail rotor. The impact flung her forward, shattering her arm against the console. Smoke, fire, screaming metal. She dragged Falcon 2 from the wreckage, shoulder dislocated, arm useless. The others were already gone. By the time recovery arrived, the sandstorm had buried half the wreck. Her report had been clean. The truth hadn't been. She hadn't told anyone that Falcon 2 had begged her to leave him. She hadn't told them she almost did. That hesitation, the one heartbeat between duty and survival, had cost her everything. When morning came, she didn't report the message. She didn't reply either. Instead, she went to the range. Bricks found her there, firing one-handed again, shells clinking in a steady rhythm. He watched for a moment before speaking. Command wants you back, don't they? She lowered the pistol, exhaled slowly. How'd you know? You got that look. What look? The one people get when ghosts start calling. She didn't deny it. Didn't confirm it either. He took a few steps closer, his voice quiet. If you go back, do you think it'll fix it? She holstered the weapon. It's not about fixing, she said. It's about finishing. Bricks nodded. Then I guess I'll hold down the fort. Her eyes softened. You're a better man than you were Mason. He chuckled dryly. That bar wasn't hard to clear. Still, she smiled, a small, real one this time. It was the first anyone on base had seen. That evening, Hensley found her at her locker. He didn't knock. He just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, gaze knowing. You're leaving, he said simply. She closed the locker, request pending. Falcon command. She didn't answer. He took a step closer. You don't owe them anything, Carter. I owe the dead something, she said quietly, and the truth doesn't stay buried forever. He sighed, rubbing his jaw. You know, people finally started listening to you here. That's why I can go, she said. They don't need me to speak anymore. They understand silence now. Hensley looked at her for a long time, respect, pride, and something like worry behind his eyes. Finally, he said, then come back alive, that's an order. She gave a faint nod. Copy that, sir. At 2300, she stood by the window again, the night wind tugging at the blinds. Her phone screen glowed in the dark. The cursor blinked beside the unopened message. She typed 3 words. Reply confirmed, available, Carter. Then she hit send. The screen dimmed. The sound of the sea rose faintly beyond the base. And for the first time in a long time, she felt the quiet shift from burden to purpose. Outside, the wind carried the sound of distant waves, breaking softly against the cliffs. It almost sounded like rotors. Somewhere far away, across the ocean, a classified file blinked to life on a government server. The header read, Reactivation, Falcon Unit. Operative LT, CMDR, Aaron Carter. Below it, a line of text flickered briefly, then vanished into black. Sometimes, what breaks you is the only thing strong enough to rebuild you. How many times can one person come home from the same war? The orders came through at dawn. No ceremony, no witnesses, just a file slid under her door, stamped with the old insignia she'd once sworn she'd never see again. Falcon Unit Recall. She stared at it for a long time. No sound but the hum of the barracks light and the slow, mechanical beat of her own breath. When she finally broke the seal, the paper inside smelled faintly of dust and ink and memory. Mission: Operation Silent Meridian. Objective: Recovery and Extraction. Location: Undisclosed Desert Zone, Helmand Sector. Personnel: LT, CMDR, A. Carter, Advisor. Support: Task Team Delta. Helmand. Of course. The desert doesn't forget the names of those who bled into it. She folded the paper neatly, slipped it into her jacket pocket, and looked at her reflection in the locker mirror. Same eyes. Different woman. By mid-morning, the base was already buzzing. A transport bird was fueling on the tarmac, the kind that carried more ghosts than passengers. Brick stood nearby, watching the crew load crates. He didn't need to ask where she was going. She approached quietly, wearing the same black field uniform she'd worn the day of the demonstration. The brace was gone now, replaced by a band of elastic tape across her forearm. Still weak, still functional. Helmand, he asked. She nodded. Falcon Unit's been reactivated. He let out a slow breath. Why you? Because I'm the only one left, she said simply. He looked away, jaw tightening. You could have said no. She smiled faintly. I did, once it didn't stick. Bricks hesitated, then reached into his pocket. He handed her a small metal tag, the kind worn under armor. The engraving was simple, for the ones who listened. I had it made, he said, voice low, after that night. She took it gently, thumb tracing the letters. Thank you. When you come back, he said, you can tell me what control looks like on the battlefield. Her eyes softened. Control isn't about the battlefield, Mason. It's about coming home without leaving yourself behind. She turned, boots crunching on the gravel, and climbed into the transport. The engines began to roar. Bricks didn't move until the helicopter lifted off, slicing the air into memory. The desert was waiting for her. 3 days later, she stepped off the ramp into the same endless horizon she'd left years ago. Different unit. Same dust. Task Team Delta, young, eager, half her age, greeted her with the polite stiffness of soldiers who'd read her file but didn't yet believe it. Their leader, Captain Reese, was all precision and posture. Lieutenant Commander Carter, he said, saluting, welcome back to the sandbox. Thank you, Captain, she replied, voice steady. I'll need your team briefed in 15. He blinked, slightly surprised by her tone, the lack of small talk, but nodded. Yes, ma'am. When the team assembled in the ops tent, she stood before the map display, satellite feed flickering in grayscale. One red circle pulsed near the ridge lines. Extraction point here, she said, tapping it once. Possible survivors from a downed drone unit, civilian techs attached to a recon contract, 2 unaccounted for. One of the young operators, Tors, frowned. Civilian recon in Helmand. Sounds like a trap. Aaron met his eyes. Everything out here is a trap. The question is whether we spring it or dismantle it. Silence followed. Reese gave a small nod. Copy that. She studied their faces, disciplined but uncertain. They didn't know yet that the desert isn't the enemy. The silence is. That night she sat outside the tent, boots half buried in the sand, stars burning like flares frozen in time. The desert at night has its own kind of music, wind whispering over dunes, the occasional crack of distant rock, the pulse of unseen engines. She took the photo from her pocket, smoothing its edges. The faces in it looked back through time. Falcon 1, Falcon 2, Falcon 4. She'd memorized every expression, every scar. Falcon 3, that was her. She whispered their names once, the way you whisper prayers to people who can't hear them anymore. Then she felt a presence beside her. Captain Reese. Couldn't sleep, he asked. Didn't try. He crouched down, lighting a cigarette, shielding the flame from the wind. I read your file, he said. They said you kept your pilot alive after the crash, walked him 2 clicks under fire. Aaron didn't respond. They also said you disobeyed orders to evacuate, he added. She looked at him then, her voice quiet. Orders are simple, people aren't. He nodded slowly, exhaling smoke toward the stars. Guess that's what makes you the legend they keep whispering about. I'm not a legend, she said. I'm a lesson. He didn't ask what kind. At dawn they moved. The convoy rolled out across the flats, engines muffled, the horizon shimmering under the first bruise of sunlight. Aaron rode shotgun, eyes scanning the distance. The sand was deceptive, soft where it looked solid, alive where it looked still. Halfway to the coordinates, a signal spiked on the tracker. Movement 3 clicks ahead. Reese gave the order to slow. The vehicles fanned out, defensive formation. Aaron raised her binoculars. Through the wavering heat she saw it. Wreckage, half buried, smoke curling faintly from a gutted fuselage. Drone recon pod, she said, recent. They dismounted, spreading in pairs. Aaron moved with deliberate calm, her body remembering what it had once done effortlessly. The brace had left her right arm stiff, but she'd learned to make limitation look like precision. Then came the sound. A faint, rhythmic tapping from beneath the wreck. Movement, Torres hissed. Aaron gestured for silence, dropping to one knee. The sand shifted. A figure emerged, dust-covered, coughing. Civilian, early 30s, eyes wide with disbelief. She moved forward slowly. We're here to help, stay still. He looked up at her, trembling. They said you were dead. Her blood went cold. Who did? Before he could answer, a gunshot tore through the air. Chaos bloomed like thunder. Bullets ripped through the sand, snapping past their heads. Contact left, Reese shouted. Aaron pulled the civilian down, pressing him flat against the wreck. Delta returned fire, short, controlled bursts. The sound of automatic rifles echoed against the ridge. 3 hostiles, ridgeline north, Torres called. Aaron's mind went still. No panic, no noise, just calculation. Wind direction, range, angles. She crawled to a better line of sight, rifle balanced against a piece of debris. Through the scope she saw them, silhouettes darting between rocks, disciplined, trained. Not insurgents, mercs. Target patterns military, she said into the calm. This wasn't random. Reese swore under his breath. Ambush, they were waiting for us. Aaron adjusted her aim. Her left hand steadied the rifle, the right trembled slightly but held. She exhaled once slow. Crack. 1 down. She moved to the next target before the first body hit the ground. Crack. 2. The third vanished behind the ridge. Cease fire, she ordered. They're falling back. The desert went quiet again, eerily fast, like a heartbeat cut short. Reese approached, scanning the ridge. You just saved us from a bad day, Commander. Aaron didn't answer. She was kneeling beside the wreck again, checking the civilian's pulse. He was shaken but alive. You said they thought I was dead, she said. Explain. The man swallowed hard. The data you came for, it's not just recon, it's evidence. Names, coordinates, deals. Someone didn't want it to reach your command. Reese frowned. Deals. The civilian nodded. Falcon unit wasn't shut down for injury reports. They were silenced because they saw too much. Aaron's chest went still. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Who told you that? She asked. He met her eyes. Your old CO, the one they said died with the team. Falcon 1. The world narrowed to a point. Her vision blurred, then refocused. "Where is he?" she whispered. "He sent me the signal," the civilian said. "He's alive, but he's hiding. Said you'd come back someday." She stood slowly, the wind tugging at her hair. Her shadow stretched long across the sand. For the first time in years, Aaron Carter didn't feel like an instructor, or a survivor, or a name whispered in respect. She felt like a soldier again. A soldier about to finish what the desert never let her forget. That night back at the forward base, Reese approached her tent. "You knew there was more to this mission," he said quietly. She looked at him, expression unreadable. "I suspected." He crossed his arms. "And you didn't tell us." "I needed to be sure first." "Sure of what?" She hesitated. "Then, that ghosts can bleed." He studied her face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Whatever this is, we're in it now." "I know." "Then what's next?" Aaron looked toward the desert horizon, where the sand swallowed all direction. "We find Falcon 1," she said, "and we find out who buried the truth." Reese exhaled. "You think it's worth it?" Her gaze hardened. "It's not about worth, it's about weight." He didn't understand, not yet. But he would. That night, as the camp lights flickered under the wind, Aaron lay awake in her cot. The sounds of the desert pressed close, distant engines, the whisper of shifting dunes. Her right arm ached, the ghost of old pain crawling through muscle memory. She flexed her fingers, slow, deliberate. The scar tissue pulled but didn't resist. In the dim light, she reached for her notebook and wrote a single line across the top page. "Sometimes survival isn't staying alive, it's staying honest." Then she closed it. Outside, the wind howled softly across the camp, like the voice of the past calling her name again. And this time, she was ready to answer. "How do you hunt a ghost who taught you how to disappear?" At sunrise, the desert looked almost peaceful, gold bleeding into silver across the dunes. But peace in Helmand was just a trick of the light. Aaron Carter stood at the map table, eyes tracing the new intel ping. Coordinates, faint radio bursts, a pattern buried inside static. Falcon 1's old call sign. Captain Reese leaned beside her, helmet under his arm. "You sure it's him?" Aaron didn't look up. No one else uses that frequency. He coded it into the airstrike log himself years ago. "Why now?" "Because he knows I'm here." The tent was quiet except for the buzz of the generator. The young operators, Tors, Dean, and Patel, watched from the corner, trying to read her face and failing. She marked the ridge line with her pen. "He's north of here, old outpost. If he's alive, he's either waiting or warning us." Reese folded his arms. "If he's warning us of what?" Aaron met his eyes. "Command." They moved at dusk. 5 figures against a blood-red sky, engines low, rifles balanced across their chests. The desert wind was sharp, carrying the smell of metal and dust. Aaron led the convoy herself. Every mile they drove, the memories bled closer. She remembered that same horizon from the night of the crash, how the stars had watched but never intervened. Now, the road led her back to the ruins of that past. 2 hours in, Reese called a halt. He pointed toward a cluster of stone ruins, half buried in the dunes. "Thermal shows a heat signature, 1 person, stationary." Aaron dismounted, her boots crunching softly. The sand gave beneath her weight, sighing like something alive. As they approached, the shape resolved. A man sitting against a broken wall, wrapped in an old ghillie cloak. Rifle beside him. Head bowed. Reese raised a hand to signal formation. Aaron ignored it. She walked forward alone. The man didn't move. Not until she was 10 feet away. Then his head lifted slowly. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. He was older now, gray in his beard, lines etched deep from sun and regret. But the eyes were the same, sharp, intelligent. Falcon 1, Commander Daniel Ward. Aaron, he said quietly, you made it. She froze, her throat tightened. I saw you die. He gave a small, weary smile, not for lack of trying. They talked inside the ruins, while the team secured the perimeter. The walls were cracked, pockmarked by years of bullets and weather. Ward poured canteen water into a tin cup and slid it toward her. Still left-handed, he asked. She didn't take it. Why send for me, sir, after all this time? He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Because someone's rewriting our history, and when people rewrite history, they erase the ones who know it best. Reese stepped closer. You're saying Falcon Unit didn't go dark because of the crash? Ward looked up, his eyes hard. The crash was cover. We were disavowed because we found something we weren't supposed to. Aaron's pulse slowed. Found what? Ward gestured toward a battered tablet on the ground, its screen cracked but glowing. Intel package, coordinates of illegal extractions, not enemy ops, ours. Command was trading locations of local allies to private contractors for deniable hits. Reese swore under his breath. Aaron felt the air leave her lungs. You told me we were protecting informants, she said. We were supposed to, Ward replied, until politics started paying better than protection. She stared at the sand between them. All those years, all those dead names. They hadn't been casualties, they'd been erased. A shot cracked outside. Everyone dropped instinctively. Contact, Torres shouted over the comm. Multiple hostiles closing from East Ridge. Aaron and Reese were on their feet instantly. Ward grabbed his rifle, grimacing. They found me, took them long enough. Move, Aaron ordered. Fall back to the vehicles. But before they could reach the ridge, an explosion tore through the sand, sending fire and dust spiraling into the air. The vehicle's gone. Reese coughed, eyes watering. We're pinned. Ward cursed under his breath. They're not here for you, they're here for me. Aaron spun toward him. Then why send for me? So someone would know the truth after I didn't make it out. Not an option, she snapped. We all leave. He gave a small, sad smile. You always were stubborn. The firefight was brutal, echoes bouncing off stone, sand erupting with each impact. Reese's team fought hard, returning fire with tight precision. But the attackers were organized, mercenaries, well-equipped, and too coordinated to be local. Aaron took cover behind a collapsed wall, counting rounds. Ward crouched beside her, blood trickling from his temple. You shouldn't have come back, he said between breaths. You shouldn't have sent for me, she replied. He laughed softly. Still think control beats chaos. She reloaded, eyes scanning the ridge. It's the only reason we're still alive. Then she spotted it, a glint on the far dune, a sniper. Her body reacted before thought. She raised her rifle, exhaled once. The shot was clean. The glint vanished. Reese's voice came through the comm. East flank secure, we're pulling out. Aaron turned to Ward. We've got a window. He shook his head. You go. Not happening. His hand tightened on her shoulder. Aaron, listen. There's a drive encrypted. It's proof of everything. Take it. He pressed a small metal case into her palm. You're the only one I trust to get it home. A round slammed into the wall beside them. Dust exploded in her face. Not leaving you, she said through clenched teeth. Ward smiled, tired but proud. You already did once, don't make it twice. Before she could answer, another explosion ripped through the ridge. A shockwave threw her backward, slamming her into the ground. Her vision blurred, sound turned distant, muffled. Through the haze she saw Ward stumble forward, still firing, still covering them, until a final flash swallowed the night. Then nothing. When she woke, the world was quiet again. The stars were bright. Too bright. Reese knelt beside her, hand on her shoulder. "You're okay," he said softly. "We got out." She blinked, forcing her vision to clear. "Ward." Reese's eyes said everything. The ruins were gone, flattened. So was he. Her fingers clenched around the metal case, still in her hand. It was warm, scorched, but intact. She stared at it, then at the empty horizon. "Let's move," she whispered. Back at base, silence followed her like a shadow. She handed the case to Reese without a word. Inside was a hard drive and a folded note. Reese opened it. 3 words scrawled in pencil. "Don't trust command." He looked at her. "What do we do?" "We go dark," she said. "No transmissions, no reports, no names." "You think they'll come after us?" She met his gaze. "They already have." That night she sat alone in the comms tent, the hum of the servers filling the space around her. She plugged the drive into an encrypted port. Lines of code filled the screen, files, videos, mission logs. Each one was a wound reopened. Each line a betrayal. She watched one clip, helmet cam footage from years ago. Her own voice, younger, steady under fire. "Falcon 2, move. We've got civilians in the crossfire." Then another voice, "Ward." "They're not civilians, they're assets." The feed cut to static. Erin's hand tightened on the desk. She felt her pulse hammer behind her eyes. Everything she'd fought for, every life she thought she'd saved, had been built on someone else's lie. She closed the file, breathing slow, deliberate. Control, always control. Outside, the wind rattled the tent flap. A new sound joined it, footsteps. Reese entered quietly. "Any luck?" She looked at him, eyes cold but calm. "Enough to burn careers." He hesitated. "You sure you want to light that match?" She stared at the drive in her hand. "No," she said, "but someone has to." He nodded once. "Then I'm with you." For the first time since Helmand, she felt something close to trust again. At 300, she transmitted one message, short, encrypted, and impossible to trace. It wasn't sent to command. It was sent to Hensley. Subject: Falcon debrief. Message: trust no channels. Extraction needed. Carter. She hit send. Then powered everything down. Outside, the desert wind howled across the camp like a warning. She stood there, eyes on the horizon, the hard drive clutched in her hand. Somewhere beneath that endless sky, the ghosts of Falcon Unit were finally stirring. And this time, Erin Carter wasn't running from them. She was coming for the truth that had buried them all. When truth becomes dangerous, silence becomes a weapon. But Erin Carter had already mastered both. The message she sent to Hensley was short, barely 20 words, no attachments, no coordinates. Yet somewhere in that encrypted signal, someone had been listening. It started the next morning. Reese was the first to notice. A drone circling higher than standard range, too still, too interested. "Recon," he muttered. Erin followed his gaze, her instincts tightening. No markings, too quiet for recon, too high for friendly. Within hours, their encrypted channel flickered. Static, then a new voice, cold, official. "Task Team Delta, this is Command Ops. You are ordered to stand down. Upload all mission data to Central Server immediately." Reese frowned. "That's not protocol." Erin's reply was ice. "They're trying to pull the files." "From us." "From me." She unplugged the hard drive, slid it into her vest. "Pack up, we move now." They broke camp within minutes. No radio, no signal flares. Just instinct and the desert. Tors drove the lead jeep. Reese rode beside her, scanning the horizon through binoculars. Erin sat in the back, silent, rifle across her knees. Behind them, the wind erased their tracks almost instantly. The desert is kind to those who know how to disappear. Reese finally spoke. Command wants to bury this, don't they? Aaron's jaw tightened. They already did once. He looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. And you? She met his eyes. I'm not letting them do it again. By dusk, they reached the canyon pass, narrow, carved by centuries of wind and silence. Aaron ordered a stop. They needed cover. They needed time. The team took positions among the rocks, scanning for movement. The air was heavy, almost listening. Patel checked the signal jammer. No chatter in or out. We're dark. Good, Aaron said. Let's keep it that way. Reese crouched beside her. You really think command would turn on its own? She glanced at him. I don't think I know. How? She looked down at the scar running along her right arm. They already did. Reese didn't ask what she meant. Some truths were too raw to translate. Night fell without ceremony. The desert turned cold, the stars sharp enough to cut. The team built a small fireless camp, no light, no noise. They ate in silence, the way soldiers do when words are heavier than hunger. Torres finally broke it. What's on that drive, ma'am? Aaron's eyes stayed on the horizon. Names, coordinates, contracts, people who sold our allies for signatures and silence. Command level. Higher. Reese rubbed a hand over his jaw. Then what's the end game? Expose them. Expose truth, she said quietly. The rest will follow. Patel frowned. If we send that data, they'll trace it back. They'll trace it anyway, Aaron said. We can't hide forever, but we can choose where to make our stand. The words hung in the air like a quiet promise. At 200, movement. Torres caught it first. 3 dots on infrared, moving fast across the flats. Vehicles. Contact incoming bearing east, 15 minutes out. Reese grabbed his headset. Command must have pinged our last coordinates. Aaron stood calm, measured. They're not sending a rescue, they're sending a cleanup. Reese's voice dropped. How do you know? Because they're not broadcasting ID beacons. She slung her rifle, eyes narrowing. Positions. No one fires until I say. The engines grew louder. Black SUVs cutting through the night, headlights off. 5 vehicles. Unmarked. Through the scope, Aaron saw men in tactical gear. No insignia, no flags. Private paid. She whispered into the comm, their contractors, stay low. Reese's jaw flexed. Orders. Wait. The convoy slowed, engines idling, headlights still dark. One of the vehicles stopped short of the canyon mouth. A figure stepped out. Male. Tall. Voice amplified through a megaphone. Lieutenant Commander Carter, stand down. You are in unauthorized possession of classified material. The voice was calm, too calm. Aaron recognized it instantly. Commander Blake Hensley. Reese's eyes widened. It's him. Aaron didn't move. Her breath caught. No, that's impossible. The voice came again. Carter, I know you're there. You're making a mistake. Reese whispered, he's the one who called for extraction. Aaron's pulse steadied, her tone flat. He wasn't the only one reading the signal. She lifted the binoculars. Under the pale starlight, she could see him clearly now. Same posture, same calm authority. But his face harder, colder. She switched to thermal. Behind him, the contractors were spreading out, surrounding the canyon. Ambush, she murmured. Reese's voice was tight. You think he's dirty? Her reply was quiet, certain. I think he's surviving. The loudspeaker crackled again. You can't win this, Carter. Give me the drive. I can still protect you. She almost laughed. Protect. The same word Ward had used the day everything went wrong. She pressed her thumb against the hard drive in her pocket. The metal felt heavy, alive. Then she spoke into her mic. On my mark, smokes out, move north. Reese nodded, eyes steady. Tors and Patel prepared the canisters. 3, 2, 1. The night exploded in white haze. Gunfire tore through the silence a second later. The canyon became chaos. Muzzle flashes strobed through the smoke, echoes bouncing off the walls. Tors covered the flank, while Patel jammed the comms to block drone feeds. Erin moved through the dust like she'd been born in it, precise, fluid, each motion a memory of old training reawakened. She fired once, twice, measured bursts never wasteful. Her right arm burned with every recoil, but she kept moving. Reese shouted over the noise, "We're boxed in." Erin pointed toward a narrow crack in the rock face. "There, move." They slipped through one by one, sand sliding beneath their boots. Behind them, voices shouted, orders, anger, confusion. When the gunfire finally faded, the desert swallowed the sound whole. They moved through the night, guided only by moonlight and instinct. By dawn, they reached the cliffs overlooking an abandoned airstrip, long dead, half buried in sand. They took shelter inside a broken hangar. The air smelled of rust and salt and time. Reese leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "They were waiting for us, Erin. That wasn't random." "I know." "Then how the hell did they find us?" She hesitated. Then softly, "I told them to." The team froze. Reese stared. "You what?" "I sent a partial signal to command before we moved," she said, "to see who'd answer." Tors shook his head. "You used yourself as bait." Erin met his eyes. "I needed to know who was clean." Reese exhaled slowly, realization dawning. "And now you do." She nodded once. "Now I do." Hours passed. The heat built, relentless. They had water, ammo, the drive, and nowhere to go. Reese checked the map. "Closest safe extraction is 200 miles. We'll never make it on foot." Erin opened the drive casing, fingers moving over the inner chip. "This isn't just data," she said. "It's leverage." "Leverage for what?" "For truth." She looked up. "Command wants silence, we give them noise." Reese frowned, meaning. "We leak it not through military channels, through the press, independent network, global access." Tors swallowed. "That's treason." Erin's voice didn't waver. "No, that's honesty." Reese studied her for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Then we do it together." By late afternoon, they had power rerouted from an old generator. Patel rigged a satellite uplink. The system sputtered, then hummed alive. "Connection's weak," Patel warned. "We'll only get one chance." "That's all we need," Erin said. She inserted the drive. The screen filled with files, Falcon logs, command memos, encrypted payments, casualty reports redacted beyond recognition. Each line was another betrayal. Each upload another truth set free. She hit transmit. The bar inched upward. 10%, 32%, 57%. Then static. "Signals dropping," Patel yelled. Reese slammed his fist on the console. "They're jamming us." Erin grabbed the manual override, rerouting to a backup channel. "Hold it steady." The signal surged again. 67%, 85%. Outside, engines roared. Reese looked through the crack in the wall. "Convoy approaching, they found us." Erin didn't flinch. "Let it finish." Gunfire erupted outside. 90%. Reese fired back, shouting, "We're outnumbered." 95%. Patel screamed, "They're breaching." Erin's voice cut through it all, steady, unshaken. "Almost there." 99%. A bullet shattered the screen. Sparks flew. The power died. The room plunged into darkness. Silence. Then, the faint blink of a green light on the modem. Upload complete. Erin exhaled, chest rising slow. It's done, she whispered. Reese stared at her. You just burned the world down. She shook her head. No, I just turned the lights on. Outside, the gunfire faded. The convoy was retreating. Not because they'd given up, because Command had bigger problems now. The truth was loose. And once released, it never goes back in the cage. By sunset, the team buried their gear in the sand, stripped of insignias. Erin stood apart, watching the horizon burn gold. Reese walked up beside her. Where do we go now? She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, somewhere quiet until the noise settles. And after that, she looked down at her right hand, flexing the scarred fingers slowly. After that, we rebuild. Reese nodded, eyes soft with respect. You really think control wins in the end? She smiled faintly. It's not about winning. It's about walking away without losing yourself. He laughed quietly. That sounds like something Hensley would have said. Her smile faded. Maybe it still is. That night, as the desert cooled under a sky full of indifferent stars, Erin sat alone by the broken airstrip. Her rifle rested across her knees, the wind whispering through the hollow hangars. She whispered one sentence into the quiet, half memory, half prayer. Falcon 1, it's done. The truth's yours now. And for a moment, she thought she heard an echo answer back. Faint, like radio static carried on the wind. Then only silence again. But in that silence there was peace. Because control isn't the absence of chaos. It's the choice to face it without surrender. When the truth finally came out, it didn't roar. It whispered. It slipped through firewalls and backdoors, through journalist inboxes and anonymous networks. Appearing first as fragments, file names, code strings, bits of impossible truth. Within hours, the world had a new headline. Leaked U.S. Intel REVALS private CONTRACTORS targeted allied INFORMANTS in secret program. By morning, the entire operation was public. And by night, Command had gone silent. Half a world away, Erin Carter sat in a dim, windowless safe house. The air smelled of old dust and burnt coffee. Her arm was bandaged again, not broken this time, just torn from the last firefight. She stared at the flickering television across the room. The newscaster's voice was steady, neutral, rehearsed. Multiple defense officials are under investigation following the Falcon disclosures. Sources confirm the data originated from within a classified operations unit. The whistleblower remains unidentified. Unidentified. Erin smiled faintly. That was how she preferred it. The camera cut to archive footage, a blurred image of soldiers moving through dust. For half a second, she thought she saw herself. But it didn't matter. The story was no longer hers alone. Reese entered quietly, 2 mugs in hand. You made the news, he said. She didn't look up. That was never the goal. I know, he said, setting 1 mug beside her, but you still did it. Erin took a slow sip, the coffee bitter and grounding. How's the team? Scattered, off-grid. Torres and Patel got civilian clearance under new IDs. And you? He shrugged, still here. She gave him a small, tired smile. Bad decision. Probably, he said, but someone's got to keep you out of trouble. For a moment, the silence between them was almost comfortable, like the sound before dawn, when the world hasn't decided what to become yet. Then Reese asked the question they'd both been avoiding. Do you ever regret it? Erin leaned back, eyes on the dark window. Every day, and not once. He frowned slightly. Both. She nodded. The truth costs more than lies, but at least when you pay it, you know what it's worth. Outside, thunder rumbled, desert rain rolling in from nowhere. Reese glanced toward the door. "You think they'll come for us?" Erin tilted her head. "They might, but the people they'd send are already too busy explaining why they were silent." "Still," he said, "that's a lot of power you just put in other people's hands." Her gaze softened. "Power's always dangerous. That's why it doesn't belong to the same hands for long." He studied her face, tired, calm, scarred by more than war. There was no triumph there, only quiet certainty. He finally said, "You really don't want credit, do you?" She shook her head. "Credit for stories that end clean, this one doesn't." Weeks passed. The leaks spread, the investigations deepened, and the world moved as it always does, forward, hungry for new noise. By the time the headlines faded, the name Falcon Unit had already become myth again. A rumor in think tanks, a ghost in military chatter. And Erin Carter, the woman who'd carried the weight of it, had vanished like she'd never existed. Reese found her one morning outside a small coastal town, where the air smelled of salt and fog instead of dust and gunpowder. She was working on an old fishing boat, sleeves rolled up, the brace finally gone. He climbed aboard quietly. "You're terrible at retirement," he said. She looked up, squinting against the light. "Better than I was at peace." He laughed softly. "Could have chosen anywhere in the world. Why here?" She shrugged, wiping her hands on a rag. "Because no one here asks what side you're on, just whether the tide's changing." Reese leaned against the railing. "It's peaceful." "For now," she said. He smiled faintly. "Still don't believe in peace." "I believe in moments," she said, "not forever." Later that evening, they walked along the pier, the sea dark and restless beneath them. The horizon glowed faintly, somewhere far beyond, the desert she'd left behind. Reese spoke first. "You ever think about them, the old team?" She stopped walking. The wind caught her hair, carrying the scent of salt and distance. "Every day," she said softly, "but not like I used to." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I used to think I failed them," she said. "Now I know I carried them." She pulled a small object from her pocket, the metal tag Bricks had given her. "For the ones who listened." The engraving had dulled from salt and time. She turned it over once, then held it out over the railing. "You're not going to," Reese began. But she let it fall. The metal flashed once before vanishing into the waves. "Some things," she said quietly, "aren't meant to be kept." The next day, Reese left at dawn. He didn't say goodbye. He didn't have to. Erin watched the sunrise alone from the deck, the light spilling gold over the water. The horizon burned in color, and for the first time in years, it didn't look like fire. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket, an encrypted message from an unlisted number. She opened it. From Hensley. Subject status. Message. "You did what I couldn't. They won't admit it, but you saved more than you know. Stay off the grid. And thank you." She stared at the words for a long time. Then she typed back too. "Understood, sir." Then she deleted the thread. Months later, far from the desert and its ghosts, she found herself standing at a veterans' memorial. It was quiet there, just the wind and the slow rhythm of flags. The names carved into the stone stretched farther than the eye could follow. Among them, one stood out. CMD, Daniel Ward, Falcon 1. She traced the letters with her fingertips. The stone was cold, but her chest was. "Mission complete," she whispered. And for the first time, those words didn't sound like an ending. They sounded like release. That night back on the coast, rain came again. Not the angry kind that scars, but the kind that cleans. Erin sat on the porch, boots off, watching the water streak down the windows. She thought about all the battles she'd fought, the ones with bullets, the ones with silence, the ones no one would ever see. And she realized something. Control had never been about restraint. It was about grace. Grace under pressure. Grace under loss. Grace when you're the only one left standing and still choose not to fall. She smiled faintly to herself. The storm outside rumbled softly, not as warning but as reminder. Every war ends. Not when the gunfire stops, but when the soul finally decides it can rest. The next morning the sea was calm. She walked down the pier again, the boards slick beneath her boots. Out at the horizon, a lone gull wheeled through the light. The wind carried the scent of salt, and somewhere in that air, she thought she could almost hear the faint echo of rotors' memory pretending to be sky. She closed her eyes. Falcon 1, Falcon 2, Falcon 4. All accounted for. All remembered. She whispered one last sentence into the wind, soft enough that only the ocean could keep it. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Then she opened her eyes. The morning was bright. The world for once was quiet. Aaron Carter turned away from the sea and walked back toward the light. The kind not made of fire or glory, but of peace hard-earned, and silence finally her own.